drive. I don't know how to switch it, but.
I'm gonna keep my mouse on.
Ay, 이거네. 내 손에
Oh, there we go. Thanks.
Oh, there it goes. Man, I'm such a hard time with this microphone.
that thing.
I just turned it off.
You all set?
Good evening. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Budget and Finance Commission to order. Doug, could we have a roll call first, please?
Commissioner Allen?
Here.
Commissioner Jesty?
Here.
Commissioner Martin's absent. Chair Castle?
Here.
Commissioner Woodham?
Here.
Commissioner Samples is absent, and Commissioner Sherbin?
Here.
Okay. Please stand as we say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is to approve the order of agenda for tonight. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move we approve it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next, Doug, are there any blue folder items, additional backup
Sure,
materials?
there's no blue folders tonight.
Okay. Next, we have the consent calendar. Do we have a motion to approve the affidavit of posting for this meeting for March 29th?
Moved.
Yeah.
To a second?
Yes, I do.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, are there any excluded consent calendar items or items from previous
No,
agendas?
there's none.
Okay. And items up for discussion prior to action for tonight is the discussion and possible action regarding the fiscal year 23-24 mid-year budget. This evening, we'll have a presentation from our finance director, Wendy Colazo.
Good evening to the commission. Wendy Colazo, Finance Director. This is your annual mid-year review for fiscal year 2023-2024. And of course, we look for this commission to present the financial conditions right now as it relates to the 23-24 budget. And we'll be going over and I'll be walking you through across from revenues, expenditures, the performance of them, some allocation information as it relates to ISF, a quick overview of capital and where we stand with that, estimated fund balances, and at any time, like I said, if you have any questions, feel free as I go through the presentation for you for any discussion that you'd like to have. So as mentioned before, obviously our purpose and the purpose of a mid-year review is to provide not only you, the commission, but the public, right, this summary of just the condition across all major funds with emphasis on that general fund, core revenues and expenditures. This is a snapshot of what has happened through the first 6 months of the fiscal year. And this is with an ending date of December 31st, 2023. This also is to provide an update for you on the reserve balances and where they're projected to end, along with year-end figures. And then we kind of give you a brief scenario of what has happened that affected revenues, both positively and or negatively, or what impacted them overall. What we're doing here, just to set the objective tonight, is obviously providing you that update, reviewing the financial snapshots, right, to really measure performance to date as it relates from budget to actual, and then as we close into the year. And then they review the financial forecast of the following the ISF adjustments. And then finally, of course, it's to assist in the development of the next year's budget and your recommendation of mid-year towards going to the council for our upcoming April 2nd meeting. And that's what we'll be going through right now. So we're going to kick it off. And of course, general fund revenue adjustments. This is just a 30,000-foot view of what happened just graphically as far as up to this point, the adopted revenues and where they're at about $104 million. The adjustment of revenues listing at $108.8 million. And then the general fund increase that you'll see here in adjustments totaling $4.77 million. Some of the contributors to this is the revenue adjustments in the categories as they relate to taxes and how that kind of affected it was obviously we had an increase in property tax. This is related to about 5.44% of increase. In property taxes, sales and tax and use tax, a decline. UUT, and I'll go over each of these and some of the factors that are affecting it in the next slides here. UUT just stayed net neutral and is balancing, and it's an upward trend, and transient occupancy tax, again, net neutral. Property transfer tax is on a decline. Other taxes, net neutral. And then overhead, we had an increase, and other general fund revenue, miscellaneous revenue, declined. In the general fund summary, the taxes, $615,355 with an overhead of $5,061,954. In the other revenue categories, a decrease of $943,968. The targets in taxes, that 5.44 assessed value increase, which is driving that increase up in that category. Property transfer tax, as you can see there, high borrowing rates, right, are reducing that, or affecting that, excuse me. And then sales tax, those federal rate hikes have taken a hit on that. They're dropping. They're usually high. They were usually high in 22, 23, so we're back to, or trying to get back to what normal may look like, right? In overhead, the overall and biggest impact to overhead that we'll explain even further is the methodology was changed on how we centralize emergency communications and those fund costs. That just means that where some of the cost was housed was kind of classified over into a different methodology, which caused the shift, right? And we'll go over it step by step with you. But that is one of the biggest drivers. And then, of course, in personnel and internal service charges, the increases in that contributed to overhead. In the other charges for services category, this is the fire. We originally had an estimate, largely about $900K for the medical billing side of a new revenue stream that we were going to get. Obviously, the implementation of getting that fee and collecting that revenue has taken a little bit longer to establish. So that is why we haven't been able to collect that yet. It should be coming into effect shortly here, but we had to make that adjustment just because we're not going to be able to realize it. There's a little bit more to do there. In the expenditure side, on the appropriations adjustment, those things that affected were the ISF overhead, as I mentioned, annual update. The administrative charges had no net impact on it. And then there was an information technology fund correction that we'll talk about that will happen in appropriations. In decision package, we had 4 total decision packages, nothing that increased significantly or material. We had a staffing reorganization in information technology, which had a no net increase. We're just reclassifying positions and adjusting that budget using what we already have, so no net increase there. The sewer fund rate adjustment, a no net increase. And then we have legal costs that will be impacting the general fund at a cost of $175,000. And this is for the AES bankruptcy, cases that we have an interest in. User pay classes in community services, we've increased those 200,000, but revenue has been increased and expenditures to pay the contractors out. So no net increase to the general fund. It will be covered by the fees collected for it. Okay. Moving on to just ISF and overhead, we wanted to start out, I don't know what this committee has heard before about ISF, and so we wanted to lay the groundwork for you since the methodology changed quite, a little bit on the overhead, and just kind of walk through, make sure you have all the history, of ISF. In ISF, what you're looking right now is the plans that drive ISF. We have vehicle replacement, that's for maintenance and replacement costs of vehicles. Information technology, that's the maintenance again, and replacement of information technology items. Your emergency communications plan is for operations and equipment. Self-insurance, self-explainable for workers' comp and liability. Building occupancy cost, major facility repair cost, city facility server fees, and then of course overhead, which this is the one that impacts the general fund, both on the revenue and the expenditure side. With that said, you're looking here at your internal service funds by those plans that we've listed, and your 23-24 adopted budget based on 21-22 actuals are located on the left with a totality of $32,053,000. And now as we get the new ISF and reallocations happen, it is a total of $35,699,000 1.053 for you across the board, a total net increase of 11%. And if you can note, emergency communications operations on the bottom second row is reduced by 27%. And the general fund overhead, you could see that giant increase there. That's the methodology that will walk you through that change. And allocated emergency communication operations charges towards the overhead for the general fund. Traditionally, ISF, and overhead are really driven by the standard things that you know, right? When raw materials go up, costs to maintain buildings, infrastructure, things go up, costs go up. But the other major factor that could change it in this kind of swing is what we have now is the methodology has changed. The way we calc it, or the way it was the plan, caused a shift in cost, right? So that would be the two major components as to why you would have such large swings. And this doesn't mean, that costs went so significantly high and we don't know why. It's really because, as you'll see, we'll give you an example of what happened. Certain costs we were only capturing a certain amount of cost for things like emergency communications, but now we put it in administration because the general fund does support those operations. Now they're getting, paying for those costs or getting that revenue from the costs that they've implemented for that. So, and we'll give you the example in the next slides here.
Wendy,
Yes, sir.
could you go back to the old?
Yes, sir.
It's hard to imagine workers' comp liability insurance going down unless the methodology has changed.
No, the methodology has not changed. What's happening here is that we don't have as many workers' comp liability claims, and that's a good news factor. We've reduced them, actually. So we're not having a lot of claims to pay out, and it's reducing as, our way of treating things. We're having less claims against us, and that's really why there's been a huge reduction of that. We've paid out quite a bit before, but now we're balancing back to where we have not had and do not expect to have an increased amount of workers' comp claims, ideally, as we're trending. So,
Does that include the premiums for the policies?
yes. And thank you for noting that, because I was going to note that in a future slide as well, is that when we do budget preparation for 24-25, the premiums year over year have increased somewhere around 8 to 10% yearly. But traditionally, the city, quite yet wasn't catching up to that. So we will be truing up those premiums and adjusting budget to make sure we absorb those premiums. So you'll see a slight hike as we bring it back up to where it should be in the premium. It's just a natural cost of business. But it's a great point, because here you'll see the reduction this year. And then when we prepare, you'll be like, hey, why'd the budget go up if our claims are going down? Well, our premiums, we have to adjust them and put a little bit more in budget for the inflation of them, right? So great note. Moving on, as we go for ISF, and we'll start breaking it down for you here, overhead. So what the general fund impact? The general fund impact, as you know, receives revenues reflecting that total overhead cost, right? And all the expenses that it incurs for the general fund portions and the allocated costs. So we wanted to show you the net, right? Because everybody gets excited and it's like, wow, last year we got an overhead $8 million. This year we got $13 million, $5 more million. Not so much, because we got to pay cost out too. So we wanted to show you that net effect. Overhead revenue went up $5 million, correct. But our overhead expenditure increased due to those price fluctuations, right? The general fund portion itself was $3.6 million. So really the net effect of the general fund impact was $1.5 million rounded off, okay? And I wanted to kind of just show you how that just all works, so we don't just look at one side of the equation. So continuing on with mid-year, some of the indirect costs, and here's where we'll explain. We want to break down that $5 million delta for you, right? And just kind of talk about how it happened, why were some of the costs higher, and break it down. So that $5 million delta on the revenue side, right, was the overhead cost, $13 million this year. And if you take last year's overhead cost, 8.7, that's how we get to 5. Your total cost for the administrative divisions, that includes your city clerk, your city manager, human resources, financial services, police, fire, community services, and public works. Those costs include internal fund charges for the 8 plans that we mentioned at the beginning, right? Vehicle, building, occupancy, all that. So one of the reasons, why is it higher this year than last? As we noted, you saw emergency community methodology, it changed, right? So To give you an example, Emergency Communications ISF, right, was split across multiple divisions in fire and police. So you have an admin division. Well, the cost for emergency communications was in patrol, was in all these places. So when we go in and grab all the administration, their portion was only what was in administration last year. How that relates, last year in police administration, emergency comm ISF charges were $45,000. But when you take what was put into all those divisions and now put it into admin, here's your 2.5, right? All that cost goes up now to admin. It's allocated into admin. Therefore, that is the increase. This accounts for 80% of that total $5 million overhead. So change in methodology. We grouped all those things into the right category of admin. Now it's a bigger share, right? Last year it was 45. Now we're working with 2.5. Also know that this isn't a surprise. It didn't come to us when we did ISF and we were like, wow, what happened? It was noted in your last year's ISF Maximus report that this was coming and this methodology had to catch up. And I believe through a little bit of transition in what was going on, it hadn't quite caught up, but we were noticed in last year's reports that this was a business practice. that we
Excuse me,
needed to
just
do.
a quick question.
Yes, sir.
When we move costs from a direct charge to the direct departments into an overhead administrative account, doesn't the control factor kind of suffer because you don't have people that are being held directly responsible at the level that the use is taking place?
That's a good question. I guess, yes, from a cost accounting perspective, I will tell you, yes, absolutely. That methodology does sacrifice that, right? From a corporate planning aspect of it, it groups, as much indirect cost as we can. So I believe that smooths out in the long run over the years. But you are right, direct to direct, apple to apple, we lose that accountability, right? But we gain that we're capturing more and we're being paid fairly and equitably,
Excuse me, just another quick question. It goes up to your administrative general overhead. Then does it get reallocated back, say, for the fire department and back to the police department specifically on the reallocation
Yes, sir.
to their administrative group?
It's allocated back out by usage to all those police and fire divisions. So it gets allocated out to police and fire and public works. So it's all very centralized in the general fund. So the costs do go back out there. It's just that we wanted to put all of the costs in that cost center so that we properly allocate out all the costs, because otherwise we're not capturing enough to fund our emergency communications fund.
Thank you.
Is it possible to have some major categories? Because when you talk about $2.5 million as opposed to 45,000, there must be some major categories in that 2.5 million. So even if you have lost all the control, at least you have some visibility for some key components of that total.
Of course, and let me clarify that it's not a loss of control per se as far as an internal control, what we're costing out. It's more on a methodology control basis that the inherent idea that it's a one-for-one is happening. It's not really to be clear, it's not a loss of control of funding or money, to be clear for the record. But we do. We just got, when Maximus prepares this report, it starts out with just a simple summary, but we have a book explaining it from backwards forwards, which we just received yesterday. And it's for each plan, analyzing, and it's line by line. So that $2 million, you can absolutely see the ins and outs everywhere, and it's also the way we get there is departments provide these informations directly. We review them, the consultant now, and then develops and administrates. We just haven't passed that because we just received that. But absolutely, we have everything that ties into everything that got cost out line by line and in different ways, right? By fund, by type, by source, every other way.
These plans go into more detail about cost allocation than anyone. Probably someone does want to see all that level of detail, but I guarantee you it is all there. We've tied it to our financial system and it's based on our cost allocation methodology and our administrative policies. So yeah, whatever level of detail, we definitely have that in the plan.
Some major items, we don't need to look at each line item.
Yep.
But the risk in dumping everything in one big basket is that sometimes, somehow, some things get way out of whack. And then if you lose the control or visibility, then it comes as a shock when you see some costs skyrocketing and not being aware of it.
Absolutely, and believe it or not, I think that's one of my job functions is to make sure I dissect it for you, and I've vetted that. I sleep with that $2 million number, that $5 million number, and so it's my job to make sure that we're doing that vetting and not lose the control and provide all this reporting. So trying to give you a level of confidence, but absolutely, we used to, or this department used to provide a line by line, which we still do in the back end, just for efficiency purposes of the committee, right? Line by line, obviously, just we did the work kind of for you and want to give you those big snapshots, but it is, of course, available. And we do have, like I said, the report, which I believe the copies that have always been requested of the report that we've received, I think is for council, their copies, but I will request, I think it's beneficial for you all to have those plans as part of a finance. It's just, I don't think it's ever been done. I just noticed today that we only received 5, but I can provide that for you too, because I know, you all will be interested in just added level. Okay?
That's great.
Absolutely. So that's the biggest impact for much of the increases, right? We had, in the personnel and other cost increases, that just reflects any changes in any staffing additions, obviously occurring through the 22-23 year. Again, I noted to you why ISF kind of fluctuates every year. One of the biggest change is normal costs, right? Raw material increases, vehicle maintenance, the type of vehicles, what they need, the fleet age, all that comes into play. But in this case, that was one of the factors as well. But then we had this change in methodology too, right? So I don't want you, thinking, hey, oh my God, did prices go up? And that's the only thing. That is not this year. It is that, and we've noted future potential things that will affect these prices, like we talked about the premiums potentially going up, right? So it should balance out unless we have a major methodology change, which we don't expect. Like this year's report does not have anything that should change again. This should not happen consistently like that. We'll go back to net neutral and balance and just kind of deal with the economic, cost changes that are happening. Okay. Funds increasing as well as decreasing. I just wanted to give a snapshot of what's driving it, right? Vehicle and information technology, that's just a reflection of actual cost increases, right? For the services, as I noted, for maintenance of vehicles, technology, and of course, personnel costs. Some of the funds decreasing, right? That liability workers' compensation fund that was noted, the methodology, right? It uses a 5-year average for claims. This revised calculation here showing lower claims, right? That's why you're seeing reducing this year's cost. And as I noted, a potential hike will come when we increase premiums, because that will factor into the 23-24 revised calculations then, okay? Emergency communications, we've gone over it. They reflect an equipment in emergency comms. It reflects the lower utility, right, and maintenance of maintenance contracts. And this is consistent with some of the peak utility costs, that we've seen reduce coming in from 21-22. In building occupancy, this reflects lower utilities again, and then the maintenance contract costs. What does that mean, maintenance contract costs, when I bring it up? Just as a reminder, as we increase and bring in new laptops, right, we put work towards our new buildings, we don't have to maintenance them as much. So that's the delta. You influx up in the new vehicles and putting new fleet vehicles and doing that, you don't have to maintenance them as much. So it's actually happening for the city of Redondo. They put some money in, we got new laptops, new technology coming in. They don't have to maintenance it up, but technology does change faster, right? An average of maybe, if we're lucky, 3 years, right? But the delta is happening because you can see it here financially, right? You got the up and then the decrease on the other side, okay? And then funds with minimal change, these were the city facility sewers and your major facility repairs. There was no significant changes in neither of those funds and their cost.
We'll just notice for the major facilities repair, we talked about this both with our cost internal service fund cost consultant and with our HR director. The city hasn't had a complete review of the schedule that kind of sets these rates for us for several years. So that's definitely on our radar to request that, because we do believe this is something that could increase in future years. So again, it kind of reflects the ongoing state that we've had for the last few years, where we've collected kind of the same amount. But we expect we could see an increase in this in future years.
All right, then moving on to general fund estimated fund balance. Your estimated fund balance, deficit 365, 261. Nothing to be scared of here. Why? Because this 365, 291 reflects all wheels and cylinders on here if we were to expend all capital and carryover, which is an unlikely spend in the current fiscal year, especially with the run rate we have right now. So, but we take a snapshot of it through mid-year, and this is what it would be if we had to pay everything out and including capital and carryover, but it is unlikely. So we start with that and then kind of build all that we've been talking about. Your adjustments to revenue come in at that 4.9. Your adjustments to appropriation on the inverse at negative 3,981,624. Your revised and ending estimated fund balance is 586,427. That's your unallocated ending fund balance. Some of the factors, and like we talked about and noted for that deficit number coming in, I wanted to just give you some notes on the general fund here as far as the anticipated, if we call it, savings, if you could say that. But that $3.7 million for capital in the general fund, we anticipate that the actual spend burn on that may be less than that, leaving about $3 million that we're not going to get to, right, as far as pace and being able to do the spend. But we have committed it to these projects. So we'll have $3 million still committed to this purpose. However, actual spend is looking and estimated at about $700,000, right? So we'll be fairly okay. With all these projections, we refer to our capital improvements manager and verified as far as pace for spend. So we can just give you a touch base of where we're at with that. So about $400,000 spent to date right now, right, on capital spend. Parking structure and critical repairs, we have a project out there for $2 million. There's nothing expected or any charges. It is active for this fiscal year, but we do not expect any charges this year right now. Alleyway repairs is about $600K there. No expected charges at this time. And then in the other categories of capital, traffic calming, Avenue I resurfacing, there's about $300,000 through the fiscal year end that we're anticipating for this project to spend.
So just one clarification point on this is that we budgeted for 3.7. We've ordered the projects, but the money just hasn't been spent. So these will carry over
Correct.
to next year. Okay.
Correct. Some of it is just pace as to when they can get to the projects, as unfortunately these are not the only ones. And, as they align to the strategy, they're on the books. We've committed that we're going to do these projects. So funding has been committed. But again, we, based on just rate on how fast we can do projects and secure it. Yeah. Okay. The good part is that, as the reason for this is because with fund balance, the only way to secure it is to encumber it or commit it in some way. So that's why we have to go through this, exercise. If not, would not be committed for a purpose.
Wendy,
Yes, sir.
is it possible to have some sort of a spreadsheet for all the capital projects to show what the original plan was, or estimate was, what the time duration was, and what has been spent, and how much more work remains to be done? So we can get a pretty good feel for if the project is under the budget, which is highly unlikely. I've never heard of any project that was completed on time and under the budget. So if it is over the budget, how much and why and how long is it going to take? So we don't get another high-speed rail project somewhere hidden in the cost structure that comes back to haunt us later.
Absolutely. So we have, and I like to stay in lanes, right? Because our CIP manager is, the one who develops and manages and progresses the project side of things. My lane and our lane here is a little bit more of the financial, right? As it, relates to budget and actual spend. So we do one of the first actual reports that you kind of get that, I don't want to say it gets overlooked, but it's large, is carry forward, right? That has all your capital projects listed by type on a budget to actual for you and what we're going to be carrying over, right? So we can note that back and provide that so you can have, what portion, this is the portion of that carry forward that is, encumbered towards projects. Now, details as far as timelines when it comes to that, like I said, I can speak to the CIP manager. And as you know, through 24-25 budget preparation and strategy, he will come here and outline the capital plan as well. And I'd like to discuss with him just more specifics of any information he can provide this commission as far as timelines, and that's more his lane, and I'd like to check with him if that's okay.
Please, thank you.
Excuse me, if I can add to that, next month, at the end of April, there will be a joint meeting with the Public Works Commission, and all of you will be invited as a joint meeting. In that meeting, the CIP manager will be there to discuss projects. I don't know how detailed he'll be in terms of timelines, but he'll have a lot more detail in terms of what projects are in the works and what projects are planned for the next budget cycle.
Thank you.
And then another general fund, obviously significant note is the personnel spending and anticipated savings there, right? We're on track. And we're normally typically and cyclically over more than 5 years. There's always been on an 80-20 spread, and we are ticking right there. It is 20% savings from budget. That's consistent with your previous years. And, we'll factor that, and that gets trued up at your year-end process.
How do we always get how have we always gotten a 20% savings? Do we just over budget in those categories?
Vacancy savings, first of all, as far as we anticipate what we can as far as what vacancy savings we will have. So we budget as if we are 100% staffed, but vacancy savings come into place, and that normally provides that 20% buffer. That doesn't account for anything that is unexpected. So we calculate up vacancy savings, but we do budget if we are 100% staffed. All right, other fund balance notes, I want to note it for you. One of your attachments has the fund balance summary, and, in the spirit of transparency, in case, you're looking, I wanted to clarify some things and just put it out there for you in front, because I like to do that. Our revenue estimates, revised ending fund balance for the harbor tidelands, it's always been a topic, right? That enterprise fund is at a deficit $7.9 million and $3.2 million deficit respectfully. One of the first adjustments that happens because of the process of accounting and how we do enterprise funds always have an adjustment of liabilities because they don't materialize in the fiscal year. But the way the financial statements and changes in net position get reported, we back out the OPEB and liabilities because that fund or type of fund reports all in as if you were going to pay it that year, which of course we know not. Now, here's a reflection of $2.2 million and $1 million per fund that we backed out because those are the OPEB and liabilities that will not materialize, leaving an adjusted ending fund balance still of deficit 5.7 and deficit 2.2. Don't get scared. Same thing, right? We have things encumbered. Everything's not going to materialize in the exact moment. So, first note that I want to make to you, if you refer back to the adopted budget for 23-24, the ending estimated fund balances were almost to the T the same amount that they are right now at adjusted, amounts. So 5.722, meaning we haven't moved the needle too much, right? It's just staying, we have, so it's not like we increased deficit amounts, it's stayed stagnant. However, one of the biggest things is that capital commitments, right? We have about $8 million in the harbor tidelands and another $2 million in the uplands, right? So I wanted to note that one, because like I said, the ending fund balance is straight marriage still, no change there. We're almost to the T. And then we'll be evaluating, of course, for the 24-25. City manager, of course, has received this report and is aware. And we're working with Waterfront and Thailand's to true up what capital is really going to realize. I've outlined it for you in these future slides for you so that you're just aware of what we're trying to do to make sure what's going to realize or not, but we do not expect that entire spend to happen, which that just means we're looking at it more in detail to true this up quicker and faster, right, and make sure that what capital spend we are going to have is true. So we're working that. On the other side, on the receiving side, on the revenue side, we're making sure that all revenue is booked in. on time? How far back are we? Has everything been posted to make sure that all cylinders are on for revenue? So very long way to tell you that we're working on this to make sure that everything's trued up as accurate to the penny as we can. So highlights of that capital revenue, as I mentioned, $8 million in capital budget for the Tidelands, right? We outlined some of the projects that are pulling that, and then we verified, like we told you right now, of the reality of what might realize. So we have that harbor dredging project that's about $4.5 million. We've qualified this, and capital is saying potentially there's a spend closer when we're done to about $3.5 million. That's going to be realized. Is it going to be realized by the end of this fiscal year? Maybe, maybe not, but we don't believe 3.5, but eventually that's the bill that's going to be paid. So we know that's real. We have a Mole B project, that's $2 million. It is likely just because of the magnitude of capital that we have working out there right now, there's likely no spend this fiscal year, so we don't expect to expend that. And then in the other capital, these are the active ones. We are evaluating the cost of about $1.5 million. What is real? If there's been any shift, then this is in conjunction with the 24-25 budget strategy. Capital spending, same thing, just outlining for you the $2 million listed there. All projects are active, and we've confirmed that. And we will review with that 24-25 budget preparation as far as what will materialize forward, or if there needs to be any adjustments, right? And in the revenue and harbor, for the Tidelands and Uplands, obviously staff will be evaluating revenue as it relates to leases. That just means we also had transitions because, as you know, unfortunately, that department had a huge transition, unexpected, with a staff member. So the rate at which and the pace which we were putting in receipts had a little bit of a lag. We've caught up with that, and they've caught up, and we're working together right now just to make sure everything is getting in timely to reflect actual revenue and ensure that we have the correct funding needs that we need for that, okay?
What's the Mole B project?
You caught me. I don't know, but I can tell you what it is, and if I get creative,
I
but I
think they're
doubt
putting
it's
in a
that.
boat launch on Mole B. I don't know if that's exactly what the funds are for.
I will find out for you. At first, I'm not going to lie to you, Commissioner Dusty. I thought it was mole, and I thought it was, so that was just me. But I will find out what it is, but I'm sure Commissioner is correct. I'm not aware.
And I believe it's pending kind of a larger design discussion, which is another reason why there's no activity at this point.
I'll get you that information. Revenue, sorry, it stopped me there. So evaluating revenue is the final mark for that. Mid-year 23-24 is presented to you. These are the components that we have and have discussed, right? Personnel, the M&O component of it, the internal service funds, and then the capital outlay. There are 4 recommended decision packages that was in your packet. None of them, and as we've gone through them, net neutral as it relates to the impact to the fund. And obviously they represent the modifications to that core budget. Recommendation action, is we are providing or asking or requesting, providing recommendations to present to the City Council for the April 2nd meeting from this commission. And then next steps, as we venture on, there is no rest for the weary. We do this review for 2, and then budget preparation kicks off. Potentially right now, we were laying that out. April 15th, we kick off, so we're hoping staff gets a little Easter fun and we're back on it, So that's the goal, to be at proposed budget with the charter requirements of May 17th to receive and file.
So you've got an entire 2.5 months to prepare the budget for next year.
Yeah. Enough time, I guess. So that is your presentation for mid-year, and if I can answer any additional questions, please let me know.
Last year, when the city manager made a presentation, we brought up a couple of things that are not highlighted in the budget, either as a line item or as a major cost item. One is how much we are spending on the homeless situation. And if I remember correctly, the city manager said the money was spread, costs were spread all over the different categories. So, but I think if the amount is significant, we need to put it all in one bucket and highlight it so we can at least keep track of it. Now,
Absolutely.
if the proposition is approved, the state is spending over $6 billion. How much of that big chunk are we going to get, if we're going to get something? I think we need to incorporate that in the budget.
Sure, and if I could provide you an update, because, as when the city manager commits to something, it's our job to make sure we follow his commitment, which we have, right? We do have a grant out there for homeless services, which we have received and project to receive some large funding, as we always do. That's one way we use a little bit of tracking to see on that vein what we're carrying. So given the fact that also this year we have a new ClearGov system for budget preparation, we will have that extracted out from a grants level to note that, because there is a lot of money circulating just in general, and it's coming through the grants side of things. So we'll be outlining that as we launch that as well for 24-25. You will see a new entirely developed budget book with those items, as long as with other graphical representations and extraction, so you can see that line for line. So we are following to make sure we follow the commitment that the city manager had set.
And the
We
other
have his
one
marching
is
orders.
cybersecurity. That's becoming a more vital, critical, and important item. So something we need to highlight that. It's a great thing that now you have identified the areas in the information technology that need additional support, full-time tech support, somebody on the staff. So those are good things. But the cybersecurity, that person may not be able to handle it. So this is something that you will really have to depend on an outside firm. But then again, that cost and the risk and all those things need to be identified as a separate item.
Absolutely, and totally, have always heard you on that. And, again, respectful to lanes, the information technology director would be one to kind of lay out those plans. And, I always relay what kind of visions, you all are suggesting, for him to develop, because that's his forte, and what direction as he strategizes that with the city manager. But I do pass along, just the notes to that, and then how they strategize that is more on their side than ours.
I guess we still don't have the email system working yet.
As far as I know, your city emails are active. Maybe it's something you want to discuss with the city clerk. I think she had registered all of you. I'm not sure if you gave, if you've got a password and whatnot. It's something we can discuss later on.
Thank you.
I just had a quick one here, if I can, on decision package 1.
Yes, sir.
It's more of an observation, perhaps, than a real question. Even though we make an adjustment for the, we're sort of switching one position and for another and reducing the salary on one. I think each time we add a head count, we look at the current cost for that, and that's basically how we make a decision. My question is there a way to express that by present valuing a future cost, in as much as the benefits and the retirement are such a major ongoing cost? It's just sort of an observation, because I know that would be a difficult project, but I think really when we add someone, it's more than saying we're revenue neutral. It's saying we were adding $1 million worth of future costs so the decision is really a little bit more than what it might appear. I don't exactly know how to do that, except present valuing a future cost of that and getting some kind of actuarial deal. And I know you don't want to do that for each person that you hire, but I think conceptually, if there's a way of expressing that so that the decision makers can actually be looking at sort of a neutral revenue change, or pardon me, cost change, but the impact fiscally for the next 50 years or so could be impactful.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that, Commissioner, and just to give you just some behind the scenes, right? Are we straight to straight methodology like that? No, but we do some back end because, as you know, from your cost experience, there's a difference between a budgetary level costing and then actual and truing up those costs, right, and projections. And so for a budgetary level, we do go one for one as far as the immediate, what we're doing, the purpose of mid-year to true up, right, what impacts immediately will happen. However, we do salary projections in the back end by department, by salary, taking in all those factors as far as what we know at the time and trying to reduce down the variables and add some buffers to that, which adds to that kind of, aside from the vacancy savings, the additional kind of buffer we give. There's also additional buffers we add that are not very transparent all the time because it's the back end work. Like we can't anticipate who's going to retire in those payouts because those are not part of our salary calcs. But we add them in the back end to give us some room. We take census, we work with HR to get an idea just to project out and kind of try to do our job further than, the typical this just 1 year. We try to project what 5 years looks like at best, right? And just that, we can do. So we do that, but at an Oldsmobile level, we're not at Corvette level. Just give me a second, we'll get at that. But I appreciate the suggestion because kind of trying to find a good methodology is.
Please don't misunderstand. I think you're doing a terrifically good job. But,
You are
but
kind.
what I am saying is that I think that that decision point at the current time really involves some future considerations that are somewhat difficult to quantify when you're saying there's a neutral revenue adjustment by making this decision.
Yes, sir.
Just have another quick one here. On the, is it the Beach Life Festival that we have? I was just kind of curious the impact of that is for on both the revenue and the cost side, if the city shares in any of the revenues that are generated from that concert and how that works.
You want me to do it?
I'll support you.
Okay. So that is also one of the things, as we call it, right, the garage is a little messy. We're starting on the left-hand corner. And so the city does provide some subsidiary or subsidies, excuse me, I can't speak today. Subsidies for it, very minor, but the factor that is missing, and not missing, but we need to elaborate, is that subsidy that's being provided, how much of it really helps, right, and covers like the total cost and impact. And that comes through the uniformity of how we're billing for that, right? Those services, like what we're expending out, the police, the maintenance on the streets for those events. Departments provide us those estimates, but I feel there could be stronger methodology on how we get to those estimates to provide consistency. It lags a little bit. And as you know, as an accountant, it drives us nuts when things aren't covered and aligned, right? So we're trying to uniform that up to have a true methodology as how we created that cost to the city so we can better mitigate what we need on the rev side and true that up, better. And this is where I say that revenue is not at 100% truly cylinders on because we got to tweak up those factors, right? The methodology in which we bill to be able to provide council a better base point as to what subsidies they need to provide, like including not just Beach Life, but signature events and all that, what it really true costs, indirect and direct costs, what it looks like. And we have to do that deeper analysis. We're just starting to kind of at least know the lay of the land right now, and find out to understand the methodology that's been here to be able to maybe, like I said, tweak it up better with some rock and roll on it, so.
And we could also take a look, and I don't know that the city's done this, I did this in my prior role a little bit, see if there are economic studies out there that estimate some of the impact for our businesses of having these events.
Surely.
Sometimes the businesses close to the event get more traffic, that can turn into more sales tax for the city. So there could be benefits in addition to, whatever we're getting directly from vendors or participants.
I'd love to see a little revenue sharing on the gross revenue on that too for the city, if we can talk Mike into structuring that in the future contracts.
We can dream. Yeah. So absolutely, I would like to too, so I'm sure he would too. Anything else? I'm sorry, I keep reverting back as if I have more slides for you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, a question. In the material that you sent out prior to the meeting, there was a detailed list of revenue for each of the funds, and I'm focusing on the general fund revenue. The budgeted revenue for the year was 104.1 million, and the revised FY '24 was 108.8. Do you have the expenses that go along with that to show what the net to the general fund is expected to be now?
Yes, a more detailed one, yes. This is, I guess, grouped by character code and type to, just save on more space and stuff, but all the components of it, we do have that.
And we're still showing a surplus for the year.
Yes, sir. And that is commensurate with what's been presented between Q1 and Q2 reports that we've told you where we're expected to land, which is we are on pace, and that continues to be holding true.
Are there any other questions?
Nope.
All right. Thank you, Wendy. Do I have, can we do a roll call vote to, I guess first we need a motion to receive and file if there are no e-comments or?
Yes, before we do that, yes, there are no e-comments and there are no participants on Zoom for this item.
No one's watching us on Friday night.
Right. Do you have a question or? No. If we have a motion to receive and file, we could do a roll call.
So moved.
Second.
Could we have a roll call vote?
Sure. Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Jesty?
Aye.
Chair Castle?
Aye.
Commissioner Woodham?
Aye.
Commissioner Sherbin?
Aye.
Give me 1 second. Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, are there any member items and referrals to staff? I did want to have Wendy talk to us about the auditor selection process and what we've done this week.
Thank you, Commissioner. So just to update, we held a RFP through February, received 5 proposals, and rated the top 3 firms, which ended up being Clifton, Larson, and Allen, the Pun Group, and our existing auditors, LSL. Following that, on Tuesday, March 26, we conducted RFP interviews with all 3 of the proposals and qualified them through the RFP with the mandatory requirements, went through, they had their presentations, and then the panel, which consisted of Councilmember Nierenheim, our chair, myself and Stephanie as your finance SMEs. It was determined that I'm sorry, and the treasurer, Mr. Eugene Solomon, who's going to now tell me it's always about a pecking order. I am so sorry, treasurer, if you're watching, you are always first on my list. So everybody qualified that, and unanimously it was scored for Clifton, Larson, and Allen, CLA. So we are working right now to have an engagement letter, present that to council for the engagement of the 2023-24. They had a very robust presentation. I feel, I think it was a fair and equitable competition for all. And, just some great contenders. And we were lucky enough that the top 3 were just a widespread. We had large firm, kind of boutique mid. And then, of course, we had LSL as like the mid, and then the Pun Group, and it ended up being a little smaller firm and stuff. So we had, a good sample. But we are continuing now to issue out insurance engagement letters, present that to council to secure an agreement, and anticipating that will be our auditors for the city of Redondo Beach.
How much did we pay last year for the audit, and what's the expected cost this year?
So expected cost went up about 10%. We're about $100K. Last year we paid about $75,000 to $85,000, which is average. But also we have the consulting services because of the need and the transition that happened, which assist us in MD&A journal entry preparation because of the short of staff. We anticipate we still have a contract with LSL on the consulting side, and we've kept it there in the event we need support, just because we are 2 accountants down, and in the event just to keep on pace. The CLA cost, if I remember it correctly, Chair, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're about $80,000 to $90,000 on the audit.
I believe it was about, just about 100, I want to say. It was a little bit more, about 5,000 more, so maybe 90.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Because it was 80, 85 for the other two.
I remember 90.
Right.
And it is, I mentioned in the RFP that I had reached out to neighboring cities as well as our existing to see like the pricing, and we were well in that market. It didn't fluctuate like we were so far off. Price was not something that, not that it's not important, but not the mitigating factor. However, I just wanted to make sure that we did do the due diligence to see that it was in the market for what it's averaging right now. We put also some buffer in that number in the event we had a requirement or something, because we do have, not major, but it is a first year with a firm. We ran that chance that we might need extra reporting or something. So we put some buffers in for the audit cost in the event that there's a need for something additional. We don't expect it, but we have that in play. But 90K is where we're rounding. And like I said, the firms that competed as well and submitted, nobody was off mark like to where we were so off. That's kind of the running between 75K to 100K.
And then one other thing, in terms of the presentations that we had, all three, were focused on meeting our timeline. So selecting an auditor, getting the engagement letter signed in a timely manner will let us, complete the audit on time so that, it'll meet our schedule down later in the year.
That's correct. Thank you so much for noting that. And just because it's been a while since we know what normal looks like a little bit, right? So we'll be doing field work in the summer, engagement letter while we get this agreement. Our goal and target, I was trying to be hopeful to get it in April, and our procurement manager makes sure to always keep me humble and remind me, don't go too fast because it doesn't work that way too fast. So it's easier and logical that we'll be having this agreement signed by April timeframe to get it to council. And then we'll have engagement letter within that. So we'll engage in May, end of May. And then we'll be working through the summer to get fieldwork, which the way it'll work is any identifying issues that they have, they'll note it for us so that we can correct it before they come back. I would like to be done, the schedule we've set is to be done about November so that we can have it to presentations December 1st to council and be done. And then magically, bring in the new year in January, and guess what? Mid-year in February. That's the dream. And so that's a new timeline and just getting back to cycle. But they said that they will assist us and commit to that, and they'll true that up. And but it is a new auditor, so I expect some work. But this team's, we got it. So.
Thank you. Is there anything else?
No.
Okay. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.